In this lecture, we're going to be talking about memory and recall improvements, techniques to enhance your memory. Most of them are related to visual senses, but some of them, a lot of them, are not. So when it comes to mind mapping, one of the most essential things that you're using is your visual senses. Since mind maps are visual information, you're drawing a mind map, they trigger our memories with images, colors, shapes, and connections, which helps the brain organize and recall these mind maps that translates into bits of information. And I'm pretty sure we went through these concepts, different parts in the course, and we're gonna also go through them maybe in further lectures. Images, colors, shapes, and connections that helps the brain organize and recall these information through the mind maps. You are using your visual senses to remember this information. This information that was stored in your head. What you're doing is you are putting it out in front of you, and then you'll be able to understand it better. You'll be able to process it better. What's happening is, imagine this. You have thousands of thoughts passing through your mind every single day related to different subjects. And of course, some of them are related to certain subjects, some of them are related to other subjects, some of them are not related to anything, like for example, new ideas that you get or a thought that you get out of nowhere. Some of them are not related to anything. But what you're doing with mind mapping is, instead of these ideas coming through your mind and just going without you even becoming aware of these information, how helpful they would become, as soon as you get one information and you put it on a mind map, what happens with your mind is, you're looking at it and you're memorizing this visual information. It triggers this effect in your mind where you will start recalling and remembering stuff related to this bit of information. And then you start writing the branches, right? But then your visual information process the main core thing and all the different branches that you have. So then your brain is even expanding more, getting more concepts, because there are more concepts written on this visual piece of information, which is the mind map. Your mind will be able to process more information, and you'll be able to process this information right. Instead of it just passing through your mind, it will pass through your mind. You'll become aware of it. You'll put it on a piece of paper. You'll be able to perceive it visually, and then your mind will give you more information related to it, just through the relationship between your visual senses and your memory and your brain. And of course, what would help even more is associating these, whatever you're writing on the mind map, associating with objects, places, animals, shapes, colors, whatever it is. We talked about it. And we established that using shapes, objects, places, animals, colors, highlights in your mind map would actually help your visual memory even more for you to be able to perceive and store this information. Something else that not a lot of people talk about when it comes to mind mapping, but it's crucial, because a lot of people, their visual memory is not enough for them to retain the information properly. So writing stuff on the mind map and reading it out loud would use both your visual and your auditory or echoic memory. So instead of only using one sense, mind maps are usually focused on visual memory, but if you follow this technique, you'll be able to use more than one sense, using your vision and your hearing to be able to recall and develop and process this information. Visual memory is one of the most helpful kind of memories, because basically, think about it, the child's overall development when you go to school as a kid, the first things that you learn throughout the schooling process is based on visuals. First, you learn how to see things and perceive things before learning how to sing or how to memorize a poem or how to write a letter. First thing that you learn is to recognize shapes and colors. So basically focusing on your visual memory. And in the brain itself, neurons devoted to visual processing number in the hundreds of millions and take up to 30% of the cortex, as compared with 8% for touch and just 3% for hearing. So, of course, saying the word out loud when you're writing it and you're using it will help, because, well, 3% of the cortex includes hearing, but the biggest part of the brain is devoted to vision. And of course, also the sense of smell is so important when it comes to memory and recalls. For example, smelling the smell of burger that reminds you of McDonald's, for example, smelling a certain perfume that reminds you of a certain boyfriend or girlfriend. I'm pretty sure a lot of you experienced a certain smell at one point that reminded you of something that happened long time ago. So yeah, also the sense of smell helps a lot, but there is no obvious way to use your this sense when it comes to mind mapping. So here's the thing, though. If you feel that using mind mapping is affecting your memory and recall in a negative way, that, for example, your visual senses are not helping you effectively and mind mapping are not being effective for you, you need to either see what's wrong, figure out that there's a certain problem in your mind map, whether it's the structure that you're using, the kind of colors or shapes that you're using or not using for you to be able to recall the information and improve the memory processing of through mind mapping. You need to figure out what's wrong, and you need to figure out if there's a certain fix to it, or if whatever you're trying to tackle, if it needs or it can support mind mapping. Otherwise, you'd be wasting your time and you will not improve your memory and your recall in any way. On the contrary, you'll be wasting your time, as I said. But whether you're following a mind map or not, there are certain ways also to boost your memory. We're going to talk about them really quickly. So number one, always repeat. Repeating an information about 30 times showed effectivity when it comes to memory. When you have a certain information, when you meet somebody and they tell you their name, I'm pretty sure that most of you, you know that, for example, remembering names is something crucial. And when somebody says their name, at that moment, you listen to the name properly and you try to remember it. And then after a minute, you figure out that you forgot the name. The reason why is because you did not repeat it. You heard it once and you repeated it maybe one time, and then you didn't repeat it and then you forgot it immediately. But try this. When somebody tells you their name, try to repeat it 30 times and then see that you're not going to forget about this information. If you have anything you want to learn, by repeating it 30 times, you're going to boost your memory. And eventually, memory is something that you train. So the more you do this, the more you train it, the easier it becomes for you to be able to actually retain this information and boost your memory. So if for now you're repeating this information, the names that you hear 30 times for you to be able to remember them, well, in 2-3 months, maybe you'll have to repeat them about 25 times. Your memory is getting better, right? And another thing that can also boost your memory is using a mnemonic device or a memory device. It's any learning technique that aids information retention or retrieval in the human memory, how it sounds, and what it makes you think of. So we talked how mind maps use your visual perception. When you look at something, the color or the shape reminds you of a certain concept or a certain word, which eventually helps you with memory and recall. But that's not just it. Mnemonic devices, which is how something sounds. If you heard, for example, that the sum of your protein, carbs, and fats and all of that is called macros, but then you keep forgetting about macros, and then you remember that, you have your macroeconomics class at school, and then you link macros that you heard in the gym to your macroeconomics class. Then whenever you're going to remember, whenever you're trying to remember the macros, you're going to remember how it sounds like, which is macroeconomics, and then you're going to instantly remember macros, the word macros. And also what it makes you think of. If when somebody said macros, you just thought about mac and cheese, for example, then whenever you want to recall this information, recall macros, you're going to think about the mac and cheese and you're going to remember it right away. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you people already tried it or had these similar experiences. And third, taking time out to just relax and rest your brain can be extremely beneficial. I know how in a fast-paced world, and I'm one of these people who usually refuse to take a time out and just relax, but I realize that it is important. When you're studying, for example, and you get so drained and someone asks you to go to a park, don't say no. You'll thank yourself later, meaning that if you're studying and you feel that you're getting drained and you say, no, I don't want to go to the park because you want to stay and you want to study, even though your willpower is getting drained, your motivation is getting lower, you're starting to stress out. Your mind is tired and your body is tired, and you cannot just process the information in an effective way. You'll be doing yourself wrong by not going out. But then you go to a park and you say, well, you know what? I'm just gonna go to the park. You go to the park and you sit there for half an hour and you just admire nature or river or whatever. You talk to friends and then you relax. You go back home and you sit to study, and then you're gonna feel like you restored your energy. See, everything that you use when you're trying to focus or concentrate or study or work, they are elements that eventually, when you rest, they recharge. For example, willpower. When you rest, your willpower charges, but the more you resist temptations, the more you'll drain out your willpower, and eventually you'll have a harder time studying, right? That's why most people they binge eat at night, because they resist temptations throughout the day, and then they get to 11 p.m. and then they feel hungry, and then there's not enough willpower for them to say no to this pizza or no to this burger, and then they binge eat. Willpower is gone. Well, they cannot resist the temptations in the same way. And also, when you're studying, you need your willpower to be able to focus and not get distracted by a lot of different things that are happening around of you or different things that you want to do. But when your willpower is drained, you'll have even a harder time retaining information, because even though you're still resisting temptations and trying to focus, your focus levels are decreasing, and therefore your memory will get shorter and you'll be able to process the information slower. That's why if you study when you're tired and you try to recall this information afterwards, and you study the same thing when you're not tired and you try to recall it, you're going to find way better results when you weren't tired or when you took a break, because your memory got a bit restored. You got this boost that you need for your focus and for your willpower, which will eventually boost your memory. So if you're having problems with your memory and you feel that mind mapping is not really helping in a certain issue, you might want to try these. As I said, repeat 30 times if you want, maybe more, maybe less, it's up to you. Use mnemonic devices. Try to relate information to things that they remind you of, to things that they sound like it, not just visual perceptions. And take time out. If you feel that you're just sitting down and you just can't focus, you can't recall information, and you can't focus, you can't use your memory properly, just take a break and see if after going back at it after the break, you're going to get better. And if so, you're going to know that the problem was just that you're tired or you're drained. And that's it for memory boost and recall information.